What's up, you guys? I'm going to do another Commander deck tech for you. It's been quite some time, but I've decided to update how I do these. So now you will get to see the physical cards, my actual deck. I do play with these. And for today, we have Storvald Frost Giant Jarl. One that is considered to be pretty underrated, less than 100 decks built of it so far. The commander option, Gallia from the same precon deck, is way more popular, but I think Storvald, I've already talked about him before in a short, very powerful, very underrated because you can take advantage of something that most larger commanders just are not good with yet, and that is an ability to protect itself and also a way to benefit from your setup. That is something that it's very rare to find in a big commander. So if you don't know what Storvald does, he is a word commander, gives word to your other creatures. It's a word of 3. So your opponents, if they want to target something of yours, if it has word 3, they have to pay 3 additional mana. This isn't outright hexproof, but it's not bad. You know, having to pay 3 extra mana to do something is quite an inconvenience, and it'll make it a lot less likely for your opponents to want to waste their cheap removal. Now, as far as our lands go, it's pretty simple. Most of our non-basics, that's what we're going to be using to get our white and blue mana. Since we are playing a ton of ramp is almost entirely green in this deck, we want most of our lands to be able to produce green. And we're only running the bare necessities here, only 1 plains and 1 island, just in case early game if we need white or blue mana. We're running about 10 forests, so we should be able to play our mana dorks without failure. The only land that really serves a utility purpose here is this card, Rogue's Passage. We can make a creature unblockable, making it very easy to deal commander damage, making it very easy to deal a lot of damage in general. And now we're moving on to ramp. We have in total 17 ramp cards. It's quite ridiculous. We have Soul Ring and we have Sword of the Animist for artifact ramp. Don't want a lot of this. We don't need any more mana rocks. And this is a casual deck, so Soul Ring is about as aggressive as it's going to get. Sword of the Animist is just way too good in any kind of combat deck that needs to ramp. And then for our instant and sorcery ramp here, we have Farseek, Rampant Growth, 3 visits, Nature's Lore, Cultivate, and Growth Spiral. We don't need too many of these either, but since they do provide you with a permanent way of ramping up and getting actual lands, they do actually help us get our Storvald out there sooner. That's our ultimate goal. And then moving on to creature ramp, this is essential for the deck. That's why we have the most of them compared to our other forms of ramp. The benefit, as I mentioned earlier, it's in being able to make smaller creatures bigger. Storvald makes it so that we can have a target creature's power become 7 and another target creature's power become 1. In any other deck where your commander's a lot of mana, you would just have ramp for the sake of ramping. With this commander, you actually have late game usefulness out of these 1 mana dorks, these smaller creatures that are pretty much dead late game in most other decks. And especially these 2 down here, Birds of Paradise and Ornithopter of Paradise, basically the same ability, basically the same card. Flying mana dorks are great because they both have 0 power. You can make them 7/7s and then swing in for damage pretty easily. And pretty much on that same note, we have other smaller creatures here. These all cannot be blocked, which is another thing we can take advantage of. Probably one of the first things that you figured out too when looking at Storvald for the first time. Making any unblockable creature a 7/7 when they're normally tiny is a huge advantage, especially ones like Invisible Stalker with Hexproof and Blighted Agent with Infect. So it's very easy to infect someone with this deck because we have other ways of pumping up the power beyond just making it a 7/7. Speaking of pumping up the power, we have the creatures to do it right here. We have 4 of them. So Wild Beastmaster, whenever it attacks, each other creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. Pretty much the same thing with Cultivator of Blades, but you also get a Fabricate ability, so you get more tokens if you want to. And Master Biomancer is just a crazy card in general. Make its power 7/7 with Storvald, then you have other creatures enter, they enter with 7+1/+1 counters. This is a new card over here, Sigardian Zealot, brand new from the Coven Counters deck, so look out for this. I think it's quite a crazy card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose any number of creatures with different powers, which is pretty easy in this deck. Each of them gets +X/+X and gains Vigilance until end of turn, where X is Sigardian Zealot's power. And then we have some other combat-focused creatures in here, like Serra Ascendant. May not seem like you're really getting the best out of it, but late game, this is sometimes dead. If you're only at like 20 life, it's just a 1/1 with lifelink. So regardless of the situation, with Stormvald, you can make this a 7/7 with lifelink. Champion of Lambholt, obviously, if you make champions power and toughness a lot higher earlier on, means you can attack with pretty much anything. Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite is a perfect card, one of the best cards that you can play in this deck, because you also have the ability to turn your opponent's creatures into 1/1s, making it very easy for them to die to Elesh Norn. And then we have another good card here from the Coven Counters precon deck, Sigarda's Vanguard. So flash and flying, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you choose any number of creatures with different powers. Those creatures gain double strike until end of turn. For me, looking at this and going back through Storvald and seeing what I could take out and substitute, this was a no-brainer. Absolutely brutal. You can give him double strike, you can give a 1/1 double strike, and then pump it up, make your unblockable creatures. This is how you can pretty much win with Blighted Agent. Just a disgusting combination if you're able to get these cards. And here we have some other value. I guess I didn't really know what category to put these in, but we have Eternal Witness to get a card back. We have Avenging Hunt Bonder, which is from one of the precon decks last year. All you do is you put a double strike counter on a creature, could be your commander, could be Blighted Agent, could be something really powerful. It itself has double strike, so you can always make it a 7/7. Good old Sun Titan if you want to go with a giant theme. This is one that you probably would have to play regardless. It's a great card. We have a lot of small creatures that we can bring back. Now we have card draw focused creatures. This is why the deck I think is very underrated. You have a perfect combination of ramp, it's necessary ramp, necessary to ramp, and you also get a ton of card draw, a ton of ways to just refill your hand, play more spells. Because you're able to play a lot of things, you've ramped a lot, it just makes it so much easier to dominate with this deck. We have the awesome Esper Sentinel. It's a new card, pretty much a staple now in white. Basically Mystic Remora on a creature, not as powerful, but it's a creature. Cold Eye Selkie, very easy to swing uncontested with this, make it a 7/7, draw 7 cards. Toski, Bearer of Secrets, if your deck is combat focused at all, in green, you should probably consider playing Toski because it's indestructible, can make it a 7/7 too, and you get to draw cards whenever you deal combat damage to a player. We have Hydroid Crassus, which isn't something I've seen in other decks, but one I think you should definitely play. Because we are ramping a ton, we love mana sinks. Hydroid Crassus is a massive mana sink that will draw us some cards, gain us some life, just all around beneficial because it's flying and trample. And who cares if it doesn't have enough counters on it, you can make it a 7/7 and that's scary. Muldrifter of course is never a bad card, it's a flyer. Worst case scenario, you just pay the 3 mana and evoke it. And then we have Oren Frostfang, pretty much like another Toski, but gives our attacking creatures death touch. And then Prime Speaker Zagana is brutal. We can make any creature a 7/7, our commander's a 7/7, so it doesn't really matter. But we can draw 8 cards when we have Prime Speaker enter the battlefield. Really easy to refill our hands. And then we have some non-creature ways of drawing cards here. We have Return of the Wild Speaker and Rishkar's Expertise, 2 very good cards that we can quickly draw equal to the power of a creature we have, so that at the very least in most situations is going to be 7 cards. Rishkar's is powerful because we also get to cast a card CMC 5 or less for free. Return of the Wild Speaker gives our non-humans +3/+3, very good card. And then we have some enchantments. We have Garruk's Uprising. When it enters the battlefield, if we have a creature power 4 or greater, we get to draw a card. Creatures we control have trample, and whenever we have a creature power 4 or greater enter the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card again. So all around, this is just a powerful card, a lot of value for only 3 mana on an enchantment. Guardian Project is kind of like that, but whenever we have a creature enter the battlefield, since it's a singleton format, we're pretty much always going to draw a card. And then we have Greater Good, so we get to sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to its power, and then discard 3. Very good in a deck where we can make a worthless creature a 7/7, sack it, and get to net gain 4 cards. And now moving on to our removal, we have some pretty good spot removal here in Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Beast Within, and Generous Gift. We're not going to need a ton of it because we are going to be winning out in combat a lot, but it's still good to have removal regardless. And to deal with entire boards, we have 4 cards here. We have Cyclonic Rift, just to bounce everything back. Austere Command is great in this deck because we can make it so that our bigger creatures survive or that our little ones do, get to keep our board presence. We have Realmcloak Giant, another way that we can protect our Storvald, destroy all non-giant creatures. If we want to, we could also cast the creature part later on. And then we have the new card Vanquish the Horde. This is insane. Costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, and then you just destroy all creatures, so in most cases, that's only 2 white mana. It's also worth pointing out we have a Trigon Predator in here. We can make it a 7/7. It's a flyer, it has evasion, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we get to destroy target artifact or an enchantment that player controls. Now, even though our commander does have Ward 3, it's still good to protect him. We have Lightning Grease, Swiftfoot Boots to give haste, Hexproof or Shroud, and we have Winged Boots, which is another amazing card that comes from the same precon. The equipped creature has Flying and Ward 4, so I believe Ward does stack, so you will have Ward 3 and Ward 4, meaning they're going to have to pay a total of 7 mana, and this only has an equip cost of 1, making it very easy to take advantage of. A lot of our creatures are going to be big. Giving them flying and an extra layer of protection is awesome. And then we have 2 more ways of protecting our board. We have Heroic Intervention, giving our permanents hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And then we have Achroma's Will. Not necessarily a protection card, but it can be used like that. Also really good in combat. Pretty much can give all of our creatures whatever keywords we want to give them. And then we have a few creature ways of protecting our board, protecting our creatures. We have Siren Storm Tamer, which we can sacrifice for a blue to counter a spell or ability that targets us or a creature we control. Shalai gives all of our other creatures hexproof and a way to buff all of them with +1/+1 counters. And Sereth the Viper's Fang is another brand new card, but it's perfect for this deck. Other tapped creatures we control have Death Touch, which is brilliant, and other untapped creatures we control have hexproof. So it's yet another layer of protection, has an ability where we can pay a mana and tap her to untap a creature so that we can then give it hexproof again, so that's awesome. And the final card of the deck, but one that I think is probably the best. If you get this out here, you're probably going to win. Helm of the Host. If you're just trying to figure out how to play with Storvald, this is the card to use. If what I said earlier is true and Ward does in fact stack, you will be giving yet another Ward 3 to all of your creatures, but even better, you will have yet another trigger. Whenever a Storvald enters, you will get to have a creature's power become 7, another creature's power become 1, and then since that token has haste, you will also then be able to attack and then trigger it all over again. What's just as brutal, if not even more, you have Elesh Norn to use this with, so each time you get an Elesh Norn, that's another -2/-2 for your opponent's creatures. If they don't do something about it, they're pretty much never going to be able to maintain a board presence. And all your creatures are getting massive. So anyway guys, let me know what you think about Storvald Frost Giant. Jarl, very cool commander option. Definitely underrated going into this year. We have a lot of popular commanders like Prosper Tomebound, we have Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver. This is a precon commander option that I don't think a lot of people have been talking about, but totally check him out, very powerful.